Hey guys, it's me, Myles. Now, this is part 3 of my little mini-series about 9/11, and in the second part I talked about the papers from Jones and James. Now, I can kind of forgive some people out there for falling for Jones's paper, because, you know, if you don't have a scientific background, you won't know how to analyze the data, you won't know where to find reliable sources, etc, etc. But this video I'm going to be talking about things that the people at Ground Zero that day had no excuse saying, because simple Google searches will correct them. So let's begin. And first of all, I feel I need to apologise. I bought a new camera to go talk to these guys. I didn't quite know where the microphone was, so yeah, sorry about this bit, but it does clear up afterwards.
Hold on, let me. Yes, there's firefighters. Okay? Yep. That saw molten iron, molten steel. They said, quote, it was like a foundry. Now, running down the channel rails, there was no dispute. There's many evidence of molten iron. There was molten iron coming out of the building right before its collapse.
They say it's molten, yeah, but they don't. It's very difficult to.
There's footage.
I know, I've seen the footage come out of the top when it's come out, but it's very difficult to say if it's iron or not. It could be aluminium. It could be. It could be.
No, aluminum, silver.
It doesn't look any different than silver.
Oh no, it does.
9/11 conspiracy theorists claim that the molten material seen flowing from the South Tower minutes before its collapse was evidence of thermite. According to the truthers, this molten material came from one of a score of devices planted either at the point of collapse or on every floor, which was accidentally ignited. These devices were designed to cut through the steel beams and allowed the building to collapse. They also say that fires fueled by office supplies and jet fuel would not be sufficient enough to melt steel, and therefore, this molten material must be iron from the thermite reaction. So where was the explosive thermite put?
Every single core column, all 47 core columns,
Yep.
the huge massive columns inside the World Trade Center 1 and 2 were all accessible by elevator shafts. Every single core column had an elevator shaft in the interior going up. So
But
what does it take to climb through the top of the elevator? And there were elevators
But the footage.
for months prior to 9/11. The elevators were in constant service.
But the footage of the actual collapse shows that the inner column, quite a large chunk of it, survived the initial collapse.
For what? 5 seconds?
You just said the core columns were where the explosives were put, but when confronted with evidence that contradicts your theory, you agree with it in a tone that implies that it backs up your story. What? Okay, looking past how you can actually attach these on every single floor without anyone knowing, or just on the floors where the point of collapse was happening, how do you think they could survive the planes coming in? And let's not forget that thermite has never been used to take down a building before. But they do have a point. Fires in the South Tower could not have been hot enough to melt the steel, like I said in my previous video, but they are hot enough to melt aluminium. Aluminium has a melting point of 660 degrees Celsius depending on the alloy, and jet fuel burns at 980 degrees Celsius. With the vast amount of debris from the aircraft in the northeast corner, the aircraft is about 80% aluminium, by the way, which is about 64,000 kilograms. It is more than likely that this molten material seen flowing from the top of the building is aluminium. But truthers say that aluminium is more of a silvery colour, like mercury, and doesn't glow orange. But where did they get this from? Well, looks like they turned to our good old friend Dr. Jones.
Liquid aluminum has the property that it's silvery, but rather like aluminum foil, you know, at all temperatures in daylight conditions.
To debunk this one, it's really easy. Just run a Google search for molten aluminium. The results show multiple images of the stuff glowing orangish red.
You're talking about aluminum.
Yeah, and
It burns at a lower temperature.
it melts, but it definitely glows red. It's not until it gets to about 1,000.
When mechanics tried to say that was aluminum coming out the corner of the tower.
Yeah.
That was debunked.
The search even brings up a diagram showing the colour of aluminium at different temperatures. What's interesting here is that at 980 degrees Celsius, the temperature at which the jet fuel burns, aluminium is glowing a light orange, just like it is in the video. people bring down buildings through controlled demolition, they use explosives. And these explosives are really, really loud. But you don't see that when the Twin Towers came down. So truthers believe that it was thermite that caused it to come down, because when it burns and goes off, it's relatively quiet.
And I was able to talk to Neil, and he's just so adamant on how destructive these nanoparticles are. They're highly manufactured particles of nanothermite. It's a compound. It's not even just thermite. It's a compound with different substances that actually create more of a gaseous substance. Well, Niels went on about it for quite a while, and it just has such an explosive gaseous force without the bang. You know, you get the boom, the bang without the boom. Right. You know, and that's kind of like fits what we have here.
I mean, it's a combination of explosive power and cutting all this stuff up.
Right, but steel energetic material where it reacts with steel. Steel reactive material. It actually reacts with steel.
Does it?
But is thermite up to the job? Well, no, it's really, really slow, and you need stupidly large quantities for it to do basically anything. But how do truthers respond to this?
But there's also, if you ever go on YouTube, there's also the thing by one of the physics teachers from Architects and Engineers. They go, it's a great thermite debate. And now he just takes backyard thermite and applies it to girders.
I think I've seen this. He made his own girders, didn't he? Right. And then he made like piston-driven things.
Basic thermite.
Wow, that's really impressive. My goodness, he's cut through massive chunks of steel. Bloody hell. But then I thought this stuff was used because it was supposed to be quiet, and yet here he has it making a large bang because he's got it contained.
So why bother to use incendiaries like thermite and not high explosives? I think it's all about keeping things quiet before the main event.
Hang on a sec, did he say thermate?
So why bother to use incendiaries like thermite and not high explosives?
Yes, he didn't even show the ingredients, one of which is barium nitrate, which makes up around 29% of thermate. Does he not know that you can't interchange thermate and thermite? They're different things. Am I the only one that sees that you can't do experiments to prove that one substance is capable of doing something by testing it on another? But why is this ingredient so important? It's because barium nitrate is extremely toxic, and there'd be no reason to have any of it there at the World Trade Center. If thermite was used to bring down the Twin Towers, then both James and Jones would have found lots and lots of barium nitrate in their samples, but they don't. And with the quantities in the dust that Jones is talking about, the main cause of death from the attacks wouldn't have been from the buildings collapsing or anything like that. It would have been people dying from breathing in barium nitrate.
Thermate, a massive component in it is barium nitrate, this very nasty compound that is...
sulfur.
Well, sulfur is kind of, but that's kind of everywhere basically. It's in drywall, it's in you, it's in plants, it's in all sorts. But the barium nitrate, one thing that they people claim that you'd need, just isn't there. And there's no barium oxide, which is what happens after it goes off. It decomposes into that, and that's also very nasty stuff. And that would, if you got any trace of that, that would be an eyebrow up from me. But there was none of that actually found. So how would you?
But the core columns are in the center of the debris. Buried. It's buried. So.
But you could see where they were cut.
They were. Yeah. They
were
cut.
doing the rescue operation at the time.
And the amount of who has the picture? One of the guy, this guy over here. I'm bringing him over there. You have to see the picture.
Okay.
But, okay. Bottom line is that when they, I seen videos of demolition companies, right? And they show you like how they set up a building, and they set the charges on an angle on the core column. So like they call it walking. It shifts the building in its weight and it comes down through gravitation.
Here's the picture he was talking about, and here's the reason behind it. It's really obvious that these cuts were made after the towers collapsed. How do I know this? Because you can run a Google search for images of Ground Zero the day after, and it will show you the same images, but without them having these cuts in. But I want you to think about it. If you're from the school where these cuts were made, where the plane went in and the building actually collapsed, then you'd expect to find them there and not on the ground anchored in. So that doesn't really make any sense. Or if you're from the school of, well, they blew up all over the building, there were charges on every single floor, then you wouldn't expect them just to have these cuts in this one place. You'd expect every single beam to have that, and yet we don't see that in any of the images. And I know now people are going to send me this image, and I have to say, this is not the perimeter wall, this is aluminium cladding that's falling off the building. It's not the same thing. Anyway guys, that's the end of part 3. Hopefully you enjoyed that one as well. Remember to subscribe if you like what I do, or if you want to see some more awesome science videos. And let me know what you think in the comments, because I do try to read them all. They're getting quite a lot now, but I do read them all. So I'm very interested in what you guys think. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you when I see you next. Bye.